I've seen people with high blood pressure getting worse, their immune system gets worse, they start getting some autoimmune conditions. So if you have any sort of new symptoms since 2020, you do have to consider long COVID. And so it's important to keep in mind that it's a problem that can be fixed, but you may not be getting help where you normally get help. But inherently, they're working at a symptom level. They're not looking at a root cause level.
Hello, this is Rob with I Am Painfree, and we're super excited to have a great conversation with Dr. Evan. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Rob. Good to see you. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, this is going to be exciting. I had a number of conversations with Evan, and he's got such good content around fatigue, and he's got a whole system that we really wanted to do a deep dive on how he's helping people. He's got an amazing system that I think is really worthwhile for you to understand. And so we literally built this specifically for you to have a really good understanding of something that is useful, that can really help you. And Evan has done that. I'm going to leave the floor to Evan, and I'll try not to interrupt as much as possible. But it's just super excited. Welcome back, and thanks for helping people out and getting them rid of their fatigue. Super excited about it.
You bet. Yeah, thanks for having me back. And feel free to jump in and ask questions as we go.
I'm sure I will. I can't help myself.
No worries, but I'll try to be as thorough as I can. So I think the place to start is to figure out if people who are listening to this are in the right place or whether it's pertinent for them. So I think it's important to note a couple of things. I specialize in long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome, which are very similar in many ways. There are a few disparate features, but for the most part, we're talking about people not being at their optimal energy and having a bunch of weird symptoms. So when you look at long COVID, it's basically you got COVID at some point after 2020 and your symptoms have persisted. So you might have gotten a viral illness, you might have noticed that, you may not have noticed it, but all of a sudden since 2020, you've gotten some weird symptoms. It might be fatigue, it might be body pain, sleep issues, cognitive issues where your brain's not working quite right. It could be, there's over 250 different symptoms. So you could have, I've seen people with high blood pressure getting worse, their immune system gets worse, they start getting some autoimmune conditions. So if you have any sort of new symptoms since 2020, you do have to consider long COVID. The research shows that it's anywhere between 20 and 35% of people after they get COVID will end up with these persistent symptoms, otherwise known as long COVID. So the CDC...
That's amazing. That's just a big number, right?
It's a really big number. Yeah, and if you think about all of the people all over the world who have gotten COVID, the stats are now around 90 to 95% of everybody in the world has gotten COVID. So that's right. Upwards of 6 billion people. And we're talking about 20% of that is just a very large number. And so pretty much everybody's been affected in some way, whether it's them, whether it's a partner. And so it's important to keep in mind that it's a problem that can be fixed, but you may not be getting help where you normally get help. So generally people will go to see their primary care physician and they're not going to get answers there potentially. Then they either go to a long COVID clinic, or they go to see some specialists. If they've got heart palpitations, they'll go to see the cardiologist. If they now have chronic diarrhea or gut issues, they go to the GI doctor. If they have hormonal issues, maybe they go to the endocrinologist. But inherently, they're working at a symptom level. They're not looking at a root cause level. So at a root cause level, when it comes to long COVID or even chronic fatigue syndrome, which I think we'll talk more about in a little bit, we want to look at what are the real root causes. So besides the spike protein or the COVID virus, which gets in the body and causes all these symptoms, and depending on where it is in the body will determine what kind of symptoms you get. So if it's in the brain, you're going to get brain fog. If it's in the muscles, you're going to get muscle pain. If it's in the mitochondria, which makes 70 to 90% of our energy, you're going to get energy issues or fatigue. So the question is, why do only 20 to 35%, it's still a large number, but why do only 20 to 35% of people end up with persistent symptoms of COVID? And the reality is that it's because the stage was already set. So what this means was that the toxic 5 were already present. The toxic 5 are a combination of heavy metals, chemicals, molds, infections, and nervous system dysfunction that has built up in the body over time. And so this starts off when we first come out of the womb. So unfortunately, there's research to show that over 300 different chemicals are found in baby's cord blood. So in the placenta from mom, on average, 300 chemicals are already in the babies when they start their life outside of the womb. Okay? So we're already behind the 8 ball. And then we accumulate these toxins over time. So for me, my story, I had chronic fatigue syndrome for 5 years, from 2010 to 2015. Just about destroyed my life, my relationships, my business, etc. And my story was that I came out and I was constipated for the first 25 years of my life. And that was because I was sensitive to gluten and dairy, which constipated me. And so I wasn't able to get rid of toxins in my body, because that's a big part of why we have a bowel movement every day, ideally, is to get rid of toxins out of our body. So that's one challenge I had. I had those chemicals and toxins from my mom, including infections. We get those from mom as well, chronic infections. And then I also was eating, this was in the 80s, nobody knew about organic food. And so I was eating food that had pesticides on it, herbicides, insecticides, Roundup. We were using microwaves, and so we were exposed to EMFs at that time. We would sit in front of it and watch the thing spin around.
That's just evil how they designed that thing, isn't it?
Exactly.
They put it right at your head level too.
Exactly.
Right?
With the window. Did we really need the window, right?
I know. Let's get as close to the poison as possible, right?
And then I had mercury build up in my body from silver fillings that I had, and then also eating a lot of tuna fish. And so that builds up those toxins. And then I lived in places that had mold in them. Cats peed on cardboard boxes. I put them in my car. I drove cross country. Or this other place where there was mold from some water damage that had happened years before. So I was then exposed to mold. Wow. I was exposed to formaldehyde in gross anatomy lab. You kiss this person and you get Epstein-Barr. You get bitten by ticks and chiggers and mosquitoes and biting flies, and you get Lyme disease and different Lyme co-infections. I went to India for a trip and I got parasites, and all this stuff came to a head when I was running my practice in 2010. I had just come out of residency. We had a new child who wasn't sleeping particularly well. My wife was doing most of that work, but I was still having a hard time with it. And there was a straw that broke the camel's back. And that was some of the stress that I was having at work and some of the stress I was having in my relationships. So consequently, that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. For some people, it's moving into a new space and they're exposed to mold. For other people, they get some sort of virus, whether it's COVID or Epstein-Barr virus from kissing the wrong person or just getting a virus out in the world. And COVID really becomes the straw that breaks the camel's back. But there's this stage already set. And so consequently, when we want to go reverse things, sometimes just going after the spike protein can help. And there's a number of different protocols that are out there and available that people do. But the majority of people really need to address all of the toxic 5. Now, the difference between the chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID really is just the spike protein. So chronic fatigue syndrome, also known as CFS or ME/CFS, myalgic encephalomyelitis, across the pond in Europe, is basically a diagnosis where you've had these symptoms for 6 months. It's the fatigue, it's post-exertional malaise where you exert yourself and then you feel worse. It's the brain fog, it's the sleep issues, it's the body pain, and you've had them for 6 months. With long COVID, there's other symptoms, those are the main ones, but you've had them for longer than 2 months. Was there a question you had in there that I missed?
No, that's amazing. This is awesome. I'm surprised how connected those two are. It's how similar they are.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just another virus in a long history of people who get ME/CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome. Oftentimes, the majority of those, I would say about half of those, are related to having some kind of infection, whether it's Epstein-Barr virus causing a mononucleosis sort of picture, or whether now it's COVID. We're uniquely positioned, since we've been doing chronic fatigue syndrome for the last decade, to help people who have long COVID as well.
Heck yeah. Yeah. Thank goodness.
Yeah. And I'm going to go ahead and, am I able to share my screen? Do you know if that's possible?
Yeah, I hope so. Try it and see if it will. And if not, I see if I can give you the rights to do it. If it
Okay, there we go. Share screen. All right, give me just a second. I have to authorize that and be like, yes, Riverside Studio can share my screen. Okay, it looks like I can't do it. So it's all right. I'll just tell you what I was going to tell you. I want to go into the 4-step process. So then what do I do when people come to see me? How do we address all these? Can we go directly after the spike protein? How do we get at the toxic 5? We start off with step 1, which is identifying the causes that an individual has. So for everybody that I see, we're going to address the toxic 5. The heavy metals, the chemicals, the molds, the infections, and the nervous system dysfunction.
Okay.
If they have fatigue associated with that, we're also going to address the adrenals, which is a little triangular gland that sits on top of the kidneys and produces cortisol, which is our body's main get up and go hormone. It also regulates insulin and consequently blood sugars. It helps with our sleep-wake cycle, so the body knowing when to wake up and when to go to sleep at night. And the mitochondria, which makes about 70 to 90% of our energy and is found in every cell in the body except for red blood cells. So those are all the ones that I know that we're going to address. But the question is also, what other ones are we going to address? Are we going to address the thyroid? Are we going to address sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone? Are we going to address B12 or vitamin D or iron or magnesium? How are people's lifestyle habits? Oftentimes when people come to see me, they've already been working on their sleep. And they're getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night, and they've created a haven for themselves, ideally, in their room. They're drinking 3 liters of water a day. You're eating really good quality food, and you're avoiding gluten and dairy and sugars and grains for the most part and processed foods. You're getting as much movement as you can without feeling worse. We call this a Goldilocks dose of movement. And you're working on your mindset. So that's like what we're figuring out in step 1 is which of these are you doing, which of these you're not doing. And so when we look at these different causes, when we're looking at, I break them up into 2 different categories of deficiencies and toxicities. So deficiencies are things that I talked about, like the hormones, adrenals and thyroid and sex hormones, the mitochondria, the vitamins, the minerals, the lifestyle habits. These are all the deficiencies, things that need to be replaced. And then with the toxicities, these are the toxic 5.
Okay.
So step 2, we start off by replacing the deficiencies. So spoiler alert, this process is all about step 4 and removing the toxicities. However, we can't go directly there. We have to prepare the body appropriately in order to have the most amount of success. So we start off by replacing the deficiencies. And a lot of people have done this before they come to see me. They've seen a naturopath or a functional medicine doctor or an integrative medicine doctor, someone like that, a nutritionist, and they've started working on their food, their lifestyle habits. They've replaced some of these deficiencies, maybe not all of them, and they notice that maybe they get a little bit better, but then they plateau. And this is essentially what we see, is that these are Band-Aids, but they're natural Band-Aids. They are real deficiencies that you have. They do need to be replaced, but they're not the cause of the deficiencies, and they're not the cause of your symptoms. So the real cause of these deficiencies are the toxic 5. It's the stressors of the heavy metals, the chemicals, the molds, the infections, and the nervous system dysfunction, which end up causing the deficiencies in the hormones, the vitamins, they damage the mitochondria, etc. So that's why we have to make sure that we're getting to step 4. But we still want to replace the deficiencies in step 2 because that makes the individual more robust, stronger, increases your ability to detoxify, decreases inflammation. So then we go into step 3. And in step 3, we want to open up the drainage pathways. These are the exit pathways in which you can get toxins out of the body. This is from the liver, pathways in the liver and the kidney and the lymph, which is the garbage system of the body, and the neurolymph, which is in the brain, and the gallbladder and the intestines. All those pathways have to be open as much as they can. And so one way that I like to visualize this is with a funnel. So the funnel, essentially, the bottom of this funnel is the exit pathways. So when we start to detoxify and we start to dump things into this funnel in step 4, the gracefulness at which you can go through this process is directly related to how open the bottom of that funnel is. And so that's what we're doing in step 3. We're opening up the bottom of that funnel so that we can start by detoxifying. We can start by going into the tissues and pulling out the heavy metals and the chemicals and the molds and the infections. Okay, and so we want it to be more of like a trickle rather than a waterfall, because we want to detoxify people at a rate that their body can tolerate.
Okay. This is not a big shock on their system.
Exactly. Yeah. This is the way that we can avoid people having a Herxheimer reaction or a detox reaction or a die-off reaction where they feel worse. Because the majority of people who have come to see me, they've seen a practitioner who hasn't gone through this process, and inherently they have felt worse, and oftentimes months worth and sometimes years worth after they've gone basically straight after the step 4 toxins. So that's why we go through this process. Another thing that's important to note is that when we go after the toxic 5, the heavy metals, the chemicals, the molds, the infections, and the nervous system dysfunction, we're going after all of them at the same time, but a little bit of each. So we ramp up on what you're going to be taking for heavy metals and chemicals, for molds, binding it up and pulling it out. So we've got that stage set. So we start to decrease the load on the immune system. So then the immune system, and I said all at the same time, it ends up being all at the same time, but we start off with a little bit of each, and we ramp up on each of these so that we're changing one thing at a time. And so we know if you're feeling worse, we know why, and we're able to pivot around this, which is a really important concept in how our program is built, which is basically to make sure that people have the ability and the access to me so that they can pivot. So we guarantee a response to any questions that people have in 2 business days. I answer questions on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays in order to be able to guarantee this, because the pivoting process really is where the gold is. Like, you need to know what your causes are, you need to have a protocol, but then you need to be able to pivot all along the way for the next 6, 9, 12 months, etc., to make sure that we get people to the finish line.
Got it. So people just take the protocol themselves without your help. They may go down a path and not understand why they're feeling one way or another, and they need to pivot. And they don't have the expertise to know what to do when they need to pivot. So that's why it's great to work with you, helping so many other people, is when people are in a particular situation, you can help them pivot.
Exactly. I can't tell you how many people I talk to who say that I started down a path and then I got stuck. And I was working with a practitioner who couldn't guide me. They didn't know what to do when I got stuck. And consequently, then they weren't able to make progress, because they're going to pivot 20, 30, 40 times in the next 12 months. And they need somebody in their back pocket who's seen this and been doing this for the last decade. Me or somebody like me. They really need that kind of support.
I love it.
So we talked about the heavy metals and the chemicals and the molds. Those are really hijacking the immune system, and we need the immune system to get freed up in order to get rid of the infections. So that's why we start off with those molds, actually first molds, and then the heavy metals and the chemicals, and then we go into the infections, and we address every category of infection. So we're going after viruses, bacteria, yeast, Lyme co-infections, and parasites. And we do this, we're very thorough in all of this, and we're going after all of the heavy metals and all of the chemicals and all of the molds. And the reason why is because all of the testing for these are imperfect. So it's a bit heretic to say that I don't test anymore and that I just treat. But the reality is, after doing this for a decade, I've been fooled by testing. And I have found that everybody that I've worked with who has had ME/CFS and now long COVID has all of these different viruses, or all the different heavy metals, chemicals, molds, and infections. And so consequently, I want to make sure that my program is the last one that they ever need. And I know that I've been fooled by these lab tests. I know that they're imperfect. So we're going to address all of them, and it's not going to cost them more money or more time. It's going to save them actually time, energy, and money, because they're going to actually get done with this process and address all of those toxins and infections in ways that they haven't done before. And I'm 100% virtual at this point in time. I do have an MD, but I no longer prescribe. So everything that I do is natural. It's all herbal, and it's all very well controlled. And so we can make sure that when people feel worse, when they're having die-off or Herxheimer reaction, we're there to help them pivot.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So then let's get into nervous system dysfunction. So a lot of people poo-poo this, and I did as well for many years. I didn't realize how important it is. Now I tell people that when you have ME/CFS and long COVID, we don't know if your problems and your symptoms are 90% due to your nervous system dysfunction or 10%. We have to assume that it's 90%, and you have to do the nervous system retraining in earnest. I can't tell you how many people that I've seen who start their nervous system dysfunction and their progress is just so much faster than other people. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that the toxins and the infections, the heavy metals, chemicals, molds, and infections, all of those will cause nervous system dysfunction. And we're talking about a shift from the parasympathetic nervous system to the sympathetic nervous system, where people are really stuck in fight or flight or freeze, where they're just not able to function. That describes a lot of the symptoms that people have. So it's really important to work on this nervous system dysfunction. So not just those physical causes, but then there's also the mental and emotional causes. So this is the trauma that people have experienced over the course of their life. And a lot of people I've spoken to say, I had a very happy upbringing. I did not have any trauma. And I asked them, were you raised by imperfect humans? Did you have siblings as imperfect humans? Did you go to school with imperfect humans who are all really just trying to get their needs met? And consequently, we get stepped on in the process, or we don't get our needs met. And we end up with trauma. So you don't have to have really significant sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, etc. Those are considered like trauma with a big T. You can have trauma with a little t. You can have traumas that are considered to be maybe more mild, like rejection of a peer group, or anything that changes the way that you look at the world, that made you believe that the world was no longer a safe place. And consequently, that will change your nervous system as well. So doing the nervous system retraining practices, things like breath work and somatic tracing, basically paying attention to the sensations that you're feeling in the body, meditation, mindfulness, doing mindset work like gratitudes, envisioning your ideal day and your ideal health, looking at any sort of beliefs that you're thinking that are disempowering and switching them into empowering beliefs, looking at any sort of disempowering questions that you're asking yourself and switching them into empowering questions. An example of this is if you're asking yourself, why do I feel like crap? Your brain is going to give you an answer. It's a goal-achieving machine. It's like Google. You put in a question, it's going to spit something out. It may not be the question that you want to hear or the answer that you want to hear, right? So consequently, you have to ask yourself better questions. A better question.
So amazing. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's so amazing. I love it because it's like literally your mind is so powerful. You can, as you mentioned, you say something negative and your body wants to make it please you. So it gives you a negative outcome. That's just so incredible. I also love it. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just was agreeing with you. I love it.
Absolutely. So, asking yourself a more empowering question like, how can I love myself even more today? You're going to get answers that are really going to serve you. How can I love my partner more? How can I be of service more to the people around me, to my community, to my job, to my friends? Like, it changes the way that you look at the world. All of a sudden, you understand that you're safe and you always will be safe, and that you can be here in the service of others. And so that's just a small example, but the mindset component, working on the somatic stuff, the body-based stuff, the breath work, etc., just makes such a huge difference in this process that 6 months ago, we created our own nervous system retraining practice schedule that we teach in our program so that people can do that alongside of this process of removing the toxins, the infections, the toxic 5 essentially out of their body.
That's really cool. So you came up with a new one just recently, which 8 months ago is pretty darn new.
Exactly, yeah. And we used to refer out for it. It's not as in-depth as some of the nervous system retraining practices that are out there, which is fine. We'll refer for those. But it was too challenging for many people to do a nervous system, to join 2 programs at once. They would come to see us, and I was like, you know what? You really need to be doing this nervous system retraining work. And it was just too hard to send them out. So we created our own to make it easier for them. It is basic. It's got a basic version and then a more advanced version. And we go into a number of things in that can be supportive beyond what we've just talked about today, including things like psychedelics, if that's something that interests people, in order to provide a little bit of a shortcut to help to retrain the nervous system at the same time while we are removing the other toxic 4.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's about the extent of the protocol. We talked about how do you know if you have long COVID or if you have chronic fatigue syndrome. And it's important to note, as an aside, that if you are just really tired, your energy is like a 5 out of 10, if 10 is ideal energy, or below that, but you don't have any of the other symptoms, it doesn't mean that you don't need help. We're still happy to help you. You don't have to have the body pain, the brain fog, etc. It really just depends on where these toxins, where the toxic 5 are in your body, is going to determine where your symptoms are. So if you've got long COVID, chronic fatigue syndrome, or even just chronic fatigue, then you're going to want to look at doing a 4-step process like this to make sure that you're going to be most successful. With the most important things, figuring out the causes that you have, having a protocol that is going to directly fix every single one of the causes that you have, and then have somebody like me in your back pocket for the duration of the program that guarantees a response so that you can keep pivoting, so that you can make sure that you get to the finish line. So it really can be a transformational, if you see this as a spiritual journey for you, and health really can be, then you are going to have a transformation in this process. And oftentimes the reason why we get sick is because there is something that we need to learn in this life in order to be able to move on to the next life or to become our best self or whatever it is. I don't understand why these things happen, why people feel like crap, why they have to go through these trials and tribulations. But I do know that when they come out better on the other side, oftentimes they would not have achieved the spiritual, not awakening, but the spiritual skills that they have, or the awareness of their life, the mindfulness that they have, if they didn't have to go through a process like that. So I would encourage you to try to get that mindset on board, do your gratitudes, do your envisioning, ask yourself empowering questions, and move through a process like this so that you can be successful and get your life back.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Me being a Christian, I believe a lot of that exact same thing that you just mentioned. And that's me. For me, it's prayer, right? And then prayer, and then reading Bible verses that are uplifting, right? Because there are Bible verses that are not very uplifting, right? So you need to find ones that are supportive of what you're actually trying to do. And I'm literally working on a process to help people understand how to pray for healing and health. And because there's a specific process, but boy, your mind is so powerful, like you were mentioning earlier. I love that you make that part of your program, because I think it is very important. And I love how you've broken it into 4 steps that are really super important for people to follow. And I love that you make sure that you have them follow it in the right order. So you can't just skip down to get rid of those parasites right off the bat, or you're going to create even more of a problem if you haven't prepared your body for it. Man, just a wonderful educational session, Doctor. I appreciate you very much.
Thanks so much for having me on, Rob.
Yeah. Anything else you want to leave with anybody? And I do want to make sure they know how to get a hold of you. If we'll have it in the course and the show notes of the system, but how people get a hold of you. But let's verbally say it as well. How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm at energymdmethod.com, and that's my website, and you'll be able to find everything that you need to know there. I do have, under the Learn page, you can go and you can take quizzes to see if you have some of these infections, if you have long COVID, if you have chronic fatigue syndrome. You can also watch my latest masterclass, which kind of goes into depth on some of these topics as well as other things. And then if you're interested in seeing if we're a good fit to work together, you can get on a free 45-minute call with me and we'll hash it out. About a third of the people that I get on a call with, I tell them that we're not a good fit to work together. But I'll go through and I'll take a look and see, based off what you've done, your personality, the personality characteristics that we're looking for in the program, to help determine whether or not I can help you. And if I can't help you, I'll let you know that. If I can help you, I'll let you know that as well. And then we can look at whether you're a good fit for our program. And I think besides that, the last thing I would say is that there is hope. On our website, we've got a results page which looks at testimonials, and we're constantly gathering more testimonials. It's important to remember that you just have to follow a process that has worked for other people, whether it's, if you're going to if you want to learn how to play piano, you go to a piano teacher. If you want to get your car fixed, you go to a mechanic, right? If you've got long COVID and ME/CFS, you go to somebody who specializes in that, whether it's me or whether it's somebody else, because you want to work with somebody who does that thing all day long, because they can help you navigate the potholes. They can help you achieve your goal and get to where you want to be.
That's right. I love it. And I love how you look at the holistic body, right? You're not just looking at one organ or one problem. You're looking at the whole body and helping people holistically and naturally. And I just love that about you and love your program, and excited to get to, hopefully we find people who do have those issues. We can direct them to you to get some help. Super excited. So God bless you. Thank you for being on the show again.
Thanks, Rob. You too.
All right. We'll talk soon. We're signing off.
Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Dakota Freeman, and I am so excited to introduce you to the incredible benefits of Exodus and the molecular hydrogen generating blend. Imagine a super antioxidant that can cross the blood-brain barrier and the gut barrier, delivering its powerful benefits directly into our cells. That's the power of molecular hydrogen. It promotes a healthy inflammatory response while helping athletes perform at their very best and helping everyone reduce oxidative stress by neutralizing harmful free radicals in our body. Combined with the biblical ingredients in Exodus, you get a transformative health supplement. Feel the immediate effects and experience vibrant health today. Are you ready to transform your life? Try Exodus today.
Constantly exhausted and stressed? Introducing Exodus, the biblical supplement with 7 divine ingredients for real wellness, featuring organic barley grass and wheatgrass, aloe, saffron, cumin, frankincense, and myrrh. Plus a mineral blend that generates healing molecular hydrogen. Experience more energy, less inflammation, and enhanced performance. Exodus is your path to total rejuvenation. Try risk-free with our 60-day guarantee.
Exit the old you at tryexodus.com.